hey, have you seen this movie? And it's like from when we're kids, like everyone's seen it. I'm like, no. She's like, what? You haven't seen this? I was like, I was outside playing.
Yeah.
I was like, on the next tee, Donald, boom. And it was like, before he got it out, I hit it. I wanted to be done with that thing so fast.
Yeah.
I was so nervous. You'll hit it to 20 feet. I'll hit it to 20 feet. You'll be pissed. I'll be happy.
Yep.
I will beat you.
Welcome to the Athletes in Sports podcast. We got a special guest today, Donald Constable. Don played high school golf at Minnetonka, played for the University of Minnesota, and has played professionally and a stint on the PGA Tour. And Don, just welcome and thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, we'll just start off going back to your youth days. Obviously, you were a golfer, but were there any other sports that were really important to you when you were just getting into playing sports?
Yeah, actually, grew up, baseball was kind of my jam. I was obsessed with baseball back, I was born in 89, so right in the start of the Griffey era.
Yep.
And I was just absolutely obsessed with Griffey. I was a lefty, and so grew up playing baseball, and my dream was to play in the MLB, and that's what I wanted to do. And but loved playing sports in general, so basically grew up playing baseball and hockey.
Okay.
Got into playing golf at a young age, I guess as soon as I could walk, basically. Had a club in my hand, but never really got into it seriously until kind of later in life. So baseball was kind of my sport up until 12. And then played on an AAU team that traveled around the country playing and kind of wanted to start playing a little more golf at that time. So that's kind of when I transitioned. So I actually didn't play my first tournament I played was 13.
Wow. Which
Which now was like super late.
Right.
You got like 4 and 5 year old divisions and stuff like that in tournaments. So, but yeah, baseball and then hockey. Never played either in the opposite season. So like when hockey was done, my skates went in the closet and I didn't take them out until like a week before tryouts kind of thing.
Yep.
Played baseball all summer. Then in the winter played hockey and just kind of rotated those. Obviously mixed in some golf with just buddies kind of growing up, but really didn't get seriously into golf until kind of around 13.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did you play high school baseball and hockey, or did you play golf instead of baseball?
So right around that time is when I started kind of transitioning a little bit in regards to sports. So 13 is when you would move up to the Babe Ruth, which was 13 to 15-year-olds. And that was the time when I kind of started getting into more golf. And so I decided to stop playing baseball so I could play golf in the summer and start playing tournaments. So then from 13 to 15, 16, basically played hockey up until high school. So I played through Bantams.
Okay.
And then very similar kind of conversation came up around that time at 16. Kind of was getting more into playing tournaments, wanted to kind of look into start playing national tournaments and travel a little bit. And as you know, hockey, today it's probably more kind of chaotic, but back then if you missed a practice, you had to sit a period, right?
Right.
And so like going on spring break or, if I wanted to go south with my dad over Christmas or something like that to play golf, I really didn't have that option with playing hockey. And got hurt a couple times, loved hitting people in hockey. That was kind of my thing. I was a defenseman and just liked throwing the body around. And my mom was like, if you will stop playing, you can travel to play golf.
Yeah.
She hated hockey. Not hated, she just hated the contact and the physical aspect of it. And that was the part I loved. So so at 16 is when I kind of stopped playing hockey to start traveling year round. So 13 was when I kind of stopped baseball and kind of swapped that for golf, and then swapped hockey out completely and kind of started focusing my whole attention on golf.
On golf. So do you remember what got you into playing golf? Because it's not, unless your parents play, it doesn't seem like a super easy sport for a kid just to pick up a club and start.
It's a tricky one, definitely. Yeah. I grew to love the game from my dad. So my dad loved the game, played himself. He didn't start playing until after college, but he was a really, really good athlete himself. He was actually a professional racquetball player when he was in high school.
Wow.
And so he'd travel around the country playing racquetball.
Probably had some good
hand-eye coordination, and lower body strength. But so I get a lot of my, I guess, athletic ability from him. But he loved the game of golf, and he would always record back in the day old VCRs. Right, he would record Sunday's final round. And he'd watch it, throw the VCR tape in, after us kids went to bed, and he'd watch basically the Sunday round in the evenings. And I started staying up with him and watching watching those tapes. Not because I enjoyed watching golf. I thought golf was very boring to watch. I enjoyed playing it.
Yeah.
But like sitting down and watching golf, like I had no interest. But I'm one of 4. I got 3 sisters. And so my dad and I were, super close. And so just wanting to spend time with him, I'd go hang out with him while he watched, the final rounds. And I ended up watching so many of those that I just started actually enjoying watching them.
Yeah.
And that's really how I kind of believe my like deep passion for the game really developed. I loved playing it and going out with buddies and messing around, but those nights just sitting there watching those tapes with them was what really kind of got me into the desire to like chase my dream of playing golf.
And was that mostly like watching Tiger Woods, or was he watching like older?
No, it'd be like that week's tournament.
Okay.
So like on Sunday we're doing family stuff. He would record the final round, and then we'd watch in the evenings. And that was back when you had to kind of wait for like SportsCenter the next day to see who won or whatever. But
right.
There's always a running joke like, okay, we recorded something, no one say anything.
Yeah.
Like if you saw something on the TV, and of course one of my sisters would always kind of blurt something out or whatever. But yeah, so it was like that week's tournament, kind of the final round, and he would just record it because we were doing stuff during the day. And
probably a lot of Tiger, Phil,
for
VJ.
sure, yeah, Ernie back in the day, the Big Four kind of.
Yep.
Yeah, so it was a good time.
Awesome. And so then, you're playing baseball, and I mean, anything I've heard, like the baseball swing messes up with the golf swing. Was that hard for you going back and forth?
Not too bad. My dad would always have me carry my bag on my right shoulder.
Okay.
So if I wanted to go play golf and had a baseball game later that day or the next day, he'd always tell me to carry my bag on my right shoulder. I was a lefty. I pitched and I played short. I was a lefty short.
You threw lefty too.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm lefty, basically top to bottom. I'm right eye dominant. So with putting, it's a little different, just kind of where the ball position is. But then I would shoot pool or a gun right, since I'm right eye dominant, and I kick right.
Yep.
Outside of that, everything's left. My dad was lefty, so kind of blank where we're going there.
Oh, just keeping the baseball swing and golf swing.
Yes, sorry. So being a lefty, he was like, hey, you're going to pitch tomorrow. You're starting, so you got to carry your bag on your right. So I go play golf with my buddies, and I'd carry it on my right shoulder, which I never did, so it kind of felt weird. But yeah, you always get that, the baseball swing, golf swing, you don't want to mess anything up. It's a very similar motion, a little different kind of movements of what body part moves first and stuff like that. But it was more around not hurting my arm so I could pitch the next day kind of thing.
Got it. So I know we've talked, we've been able to play a couple rounds together, and I know we've talked a lot about just the practice and the mental game, and I thought you had a really unique way of practicing, because a lot of people go to the range, they hit balls, they go on the green, but you had a little bit different approach of how you prepared on the golf course. And so kind of talk a little bit about
yeah, so obviously, there's a lot of different ways to get better at anything in life, but there's no shortcuts to it. It's just hard work. And in golf, there's a lot of different ways to do it. You got guys that are range rats that just sit on the range and pound balls and hit 1,000 balls a day, and their hands will bleed, and they just get better by just reps. And I was never a huge practicer. I wasn't a huge range rat.
Yeah.
I loved practicing, but I'd get bored just sitting on the range. And so I started kind of taking my practice to the golf course. And then later, when I actually was in my playing career, started working with a sports psych. They actually kind of touched on this in regards to golf's really the only sport where you practice in a different arena than you play. So you go practice on the range, and then you go over here to the golf course to play. Where every other sport, you actually practice on the baseball field or the hockey rink or the tennis court, right? And so I started taking my practice to the golf course, and instead of just hitting the same shot over and over and over, I would throw a ball over here and throw a ball in the rough and get side hill lies and downhill lies and hit balls out of a divot. And right, so you get all these different lies, and it was more of like a real life kind of scenario of what you would experience on a golf course, not always just hitting it off a flat lie on a nice little teed up piece of grass kind of thing, right?
Or even a mat.
Or a mat, right? So it was more about just taking my practice out there, and I found that when I did that, one, it was a higher quality practice, and two, the length of time that I practiced was shorter. It's not about how much you practice, it's kind of how like efficient you practice.
Right.
And guys on tour, a lot of them don't love golf. It's what they do, but like when they go home, like they don't play every day, right? And so yes, they got to practice, but they got kids and families, and so a lot of them are trying to figure out how to practice less,
right,
without giving up skill, I guess, right? So I found that doing it on the golf course, it was just more intentional. My practice was more specific and intentional, and I got more out of it. But I also felt that you could actually kind of step into those simulated real life golf shots that you would hit in a tournament, right?
Yep.
You actually can hit to flags that are tucked in a corner, where on the range you just hit to the targets, right?
Yep.
And so you can do it on a range. It takes a lot more work if you want to get in that kind of play box kind of thing,
Right.
like
Your imagination,
simulate
really.
playing
Yeah.
golf. Like that's how you should practice. If you're on a range, you should do your technical work, and once you're done doing your 1 or 2, 3 things from a technical standpoint, if you're just going to hit balls, you should be simulating golf. So playing a hole, right? Hitting a shot, hitting a 7-iron, and then hitting a wedge, and then you drive, right? So
Yep.
sports like one of the really good things they told me back in the day, they go, the only time you hit the same shot twice in a row in golf is if you hit it out of bounds.
Right.
That's the only time you'll ever hit the same shot twice. So why would you just sit on the range and just pull a ball in and hit the same 7-iron over and over and over, right? And so, yeah, I found that I just got more out of my practice out there. There's a lot of ways to do it. Some of the best guys in the world just sat on the range all day, right? And some never went to the range. And
Yeah.
I know guys that don't practice, they just play every day. And that's how they get better, you know? So there's a lot of ways to do it, which is what I like about it too.
Yeah. So when you kind of made that decision, like you're not playing baseball anymore, you're not playing hockey anymore, and you're focusing on golf, like what did that look like? Like, are you, I know, there's high school golf, but you're probably playing in other big time tournaments to get to the next level.
Yeah. So it wasn't like when I stopped playing hockey, I just started like traveling every week or something like that. But it just allowed me to have the time I wanted to go play when I wanted, kind of thing, right? And so obviously high school golf is a spring sport, so it's a pretty short season. And then I would play all like the Minnesota junior PGA stuff back in the day, the state junior stuff. And then when I stopped playing hockey, that's when I started kind of traveling to play national tournaments. So I played a tour, it was called the Future Collegiates World Tour. It's kind of like a parallel to the AJGA, which is the big one out there. And so started playing those events. So I think I played like 4 events the first year. But it allowed me to go on spring break and stay there an extra week and practice, right? Which I wouldn't have been able to do playing hockey or something like that. So, but yeah, it was, it was a big move, and one looking back, I don't regret, but I loved playing hockey, and all my buddies played, and they all made it to state my junior year. And so like looking back, I always would have loved to have played in the state high school tournament. But I obviously, I wouldn't give up, where I got in golf for that. But it's still, looking back, that's the one thing that, it was a hard decision, because literally all my best friends, we grew up playing from mites all the way through Bantams. And so it just, you kind of lose that, not the bond with the guys, but that locker room bond that that you've had for so long. So it was a big change, but it was one that I was looking forward to and excited about for sure. Yeah.
Because definitely when you're doing the junior PGA events and kind of those individual events, you probably do lose a little bit of that locker room feel.
For sure.
But I feel like high school golf, like you're playing your individual ball, but you're also having a team score, and you don't want to be the guy who doesn't have their score count.
100%. High school golf, I would say, felt more team oriented than college golf, even though it is still team, right? But but yes, high school golf was like, you didn't want to be the guy to let the squad down, right?
Yeah.
I think it was 6 guys count 4, something like that. But
did you guys have some good seasons at Minnetonka for golf?
We did, yeah. So I graduated Minnetonka in 2007. So I tried to play as an 8th grader, and they back then they had a rule that you couldn't play as an 8th grader. You had to be in high school. And then like 3 years later, the AD's daughter was an 8th grader, a good hooper, and all of a sudden you can play high school sports.
Funny how that works.
Yeah, right. So so played 4 years. We made it to state sophomore through senior year.
Okay.
So we had some really good teams, and we were fortunate enough to win state in there. Was able to win one individually and a couple runner-ups and stuff like that. So
nice.
So we had some good programs. Yeah, we junior year, Alexandria beat us out, and they had a really, really good program. Probably like 3 or 4 D1 players on that team.
In Alexandria.
Yeah.
Wow.
Alexandria. Yeah, there's some really, really good players that have come out of Alexandria in golf, and they've had this kind of pipeline down to Colorado State. So a handful of those guys went down there, but so they snipped us in my junior year, and then we ended up winning as a team my senior year.
Was that at Bunker Hills?
Bunker Hills, yep, good old Bunker.
We made for Eastview, in my senior year, we made it to state, and
I can't
stand that course.
I know, it's a little goofy, and the 3 9s, I can never remember which one's which.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, it was a good time. We had a good high school team. Yeah.
And now, I mean, in today's age, I feel like kids are committing to colleges like super, super early. Did you have a commitment locked in high school, like early on, or how did you? Because did you go to Texas before you went to Minnesota?
I did. I started at University of Texas.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, I wasn't like heavily recruited as like a young kid, like some guys are. Mm-hmm. I had some teammates at Texas that like committed to UT at like 12.
Wow.
Like studs, like phenoms when they were like 10, 11, 12. And that was not me by any means. So, I started getting recruited, sophomore year, probably a little bit. And then had a good junior year. Won state my junior year as an individual when we took second to Alexandria. And so then I started getting recruited pretty heavily. And I was either going to go to Minnesota or I was going to go somewhere south.
Yep.
I always had this kind of dream of, wanting to play golf year round and just having the ability to, not have to take 6 months off and hit off a mat, even though I grew up doing it and was good at getting better that way. Mm-hmm. And so it was either going to Minnesota or somewhere south. So I looked at a lot of schools down south and took probably 6 or 7 official visits to some big schools, and then kind of came down between Texas and Minnesota.
Yep.
And ended up deciding to go play at UT. So I got recruited there by John Fields was the coach. How he found me up here, he coached Timmy Herron at New Mexico.
Okay.
So Timmy played at New Mexico, and then I don't know when John left there and came to Texas, but that was kind of the connection up here to me. That's kind of how he found me, was through that connection. But went down and took a visit there and just fell in love with the school and the campus. And, I was walking around. I was like, this is where I'm going to school.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was an awesome time and a cool experience to be recruited. And, when you're 15 or 16, right, you feel like you're like this professional athlete getting recruited, right? Like you're the real deal. And then you go down there and you're like, well, there's 12 real deals on this team, right? Everyone was a real deal. But it was a cool process, just getting letters in the mail, and it's going and visiting schools and just having the ability or opportunity, right, to go to some really cool spots and see some cool programs and basically have your pick of kind of where you want to go.
Right.
So
yeah, we were just discussing earlier about how only 2% of kids that play high school sports make it to college, whether it's D1, D2, D3.
Is that what it is?
2%.
2%.
So just the fact of getting the opportunity to play college sports is pretty remarkable. And I think why we talked about it is because parents put so much stress and pressure on their kids, and it's like only 2% of these kids are going to play college. Yeah. And not every kid even makes it to high school sports. So
for sure,
it's. But do you feel like you had a pretty good parent support growing up, and you had to make some decisions on playing, but did you always feel like that was a pretty safe spot for you? Yeah,
it was. Yeah, like I said, my dad was a really good athlete, so the only sport he coached me was baseball.
Okay.
He was a really good baseball player, and so that was the only sport he really coached any of my teams in. But for the most part, he just kind of let me play, and just understood that his role and the role he wanted to play was dad and not coach, right? Not that you can't blend those and make it work. There's a lot of athletes that have done that and players that have done that at every level, with a parent as a coach or whatever. But, he wanted to be my dad and support me with whatever I wanted to do. And if I wanted to play golf, great. If I wanted to play badminton, great. If, it didn't matter.
Yep.
But baseball, he was very good at, and so obviously learned from him there. But at the same time, like I remember I got a hitting coach, and he could have taught me, right? But he for the most part, he wanted me to learn through coaches, and he might have coached my team, but from the instruction standpoint, he kind of wanted me to just kind of learn, not on my own, but he wanted to play the role as dad and just support whatever I wanted to do, and not, be one of those dads that put pressure on their kids to, to play this sport or play that sport or go practice, or you have to make it to the next level, whatever
Right.
it is. Right. So, I feel very fortunate. And my mom was the same too. They were both just very passionate about what I wanted to do and supportive of what I wanted to do. And helped me and provided me resources to go work with coaches that could teach me.
Yeah.
So even in golf, like he never coached me in golf or anything like that. I had a coach since I was a kid, and he just wanted to be dad.
Yeah, sometimes when you're going golfing, what I've been learning, having my oldest like to golf, it's like I just want to go out there and play with him. I don't necessarily want to just like give him all these instructions and fill his head. And just like the more you can just naturally kind of get it figured out, then I don't feel like. I feel like anytime I try to tell him how to line up a putt, he's like, "Don't tell me." Like, I got it.
It's fun.
So okay, back to the college. So you're at UT. How was that experience on the golf side and like balancing academics too? Because it probably a pretty good school.
Yeah, it was good. It was a lot of fun. Golf is actually, I think it might be the top sport when it comes to missed school days. Because you have your home tournament, otherwise you travel.
Right.
And so I think we missed school days like 20 to mid 20s, probably something like that. So when I went to Texas, my plan was to redshirt, and then I was kind of like sixth man all year, and the fifth man. So in college, you play five guys.
Yep.
You count four.
Yep.
And so when I got back from winter break, our fifth man had kind of been struggling all year, and my coach wanted me to step in and play five. And so I ended up not redshirting, and I played the second half of my freshman year. And then played full time my sophomore year. But it was a good experience. I mean, moving away was a pretty big step, and then just trying to also balance school and your studies and practice, and all you want to be doing is hitting golf balls and hanging at the golf course. But you got to make sure you get the schoolwork done too. So I was never the stellar student, I guess. I was always into sports. I got a running joke with my family, my wife. If she'll always ask me, like, "Hey, have you seen this movie?" And it's like from when we're kids, like everyone's seen it. I'm like, "No." She's like, "What? You haven't seen this?" I was like, "I was outside playing," and like I've used that line like for like 10 years with her, and every time I say it, she gives me a hard time. But I literally I didn't really enjoy school. I didn't want to go to school. I wanted to play sports. That's all I wanted to do, and that really didn't change in school. So. But I obviously went to school and studied. But yeah, it's just a different dynamic going from high school to college, where you're living on your own, and you have all this free time, and you get to make your decisions now, right? Like you're an adult, and you decide if you study or if you go to class or you go practice. And so it was good. It was also challenging. My dad passed away when I was in high school. And so that was about a year before I went to college. And so moving away in general was kind of a big step. And I'm very much a homebody. I love my family and just being around them, and super close with all my sisters and my mom. And so that in itself was just a big step. And so I feel like I handled the transition pretty well with the school and golf and trying to balance it all. But adding in the, losing your dad on that, I kind of complicated things, just made things more difficult for me.
Right.
But at the same time, it's obviously a huge university with a massive athletic program. And so the resources that they provide their athletes across the board, school, athletics, some like, what I went through, I was very fortunate to be surrounded by people that really took care of me and looked after me. And my academic advisor down there, she was like a second mom to me almost.
Yeah.
So I felt very blessed to have ended up there, and I feel like that's where I was supposed to be with what I was going through in my life. But at the same time, it was also a challenge just being away and trying to learn how to do all that stuff while going through that.
Right. Yeah. And that's why like I played junior hockey, and it was one of the best things because I didn't have to focus on school.
Sure.
I was just
just gonna play hockey.
Hockey. I took one class, and that's actually where the idea for the In Sports Foundation came. So I'm very blessed about the entrepreneurship class. But it was a really nice transition then from playing junior hockey to going to college, because I already had that experience not being at home.
Yep.
But a lot of kids just get thrown into playing sports and academics in the college world, and now you're not living at home, and it's tough for a lot of kids.
Yeah, it's just a big step, and it's also a big step when you transition from college to the professional level, because you go from being with the team and someone telling you where to go, when to eat, what to eat, right? And then all of a sudden, like, you're by yourself and you're running basically your own business, right?
Right.
Similar transition, high school to college, maybe on just a smaller scale, but it's just a big step, and everyone kind of deals with it differently. And but again, I felt very blessed for the people I had around me down there that kind of helped me through that time period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know someone who could benefit from this episode? If so, please take the time to share it with them. Whether it's an athlete, a coach, a parent, or just someone who loves inspiring stories, we want to get this message out, and we need you to help make that happen. So then what kind of made the decision for you to come back to the University of Minnesota from Texas?
Yeah, a big part of it was my dad passed away and just kind of being away from home. So I ended up transferring at Christmas time my junior year. So I played 2.5 years at Texas.
Okay.
And then I came back and played 1.5 years at Minnesota. It was something I had been thinking about for a while while I was down there. I absolutely loved going to school there. My teammates down there were awesome, still close with a ton of them. And obviously the program, athletic program, and the school, and the golf, and where we got to go and travel to. I mean, Texas, the athletic program at that time, I mean, it's still massive, but they were, I think, had the largest athletic budget at that time in the country.
Wow.
So just how we were treated and just what we got to do and the experiences that we got that not every college golfer got to experience was pretty cool. But at the same time, I just knew that, I kind of wanted to be home, and I knew that I could still get better in Minnesota, having grown up here and
Right.
having done that, in the winters. I knew that no matter where I was, I could get better. Being down there, playing year round, back to what I mentioned earlier, right? I found that when I came home in the summers, I was not burnt out, but more not wanting to play summer tournaments. And that's when it gets busy. And so I found that, I'd come home and, I'd want to just practice or play with the guys. And so my summers weren't as deep as kind of what I wanted them to be from a golf standpoint. And so I think there's a big piece to having an off season and taking time off and taking days off. And, the idea that you get to go play golf every day, down south it is nice to have the ability to do that, but you get it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot when you're doing it every day. And so I just knew that I could still get better coming home, and my golf reflected that when I came back to Minnesota. I started playing better and just being comfortable around, this town and friends and family. And ultimately I decided to come back. And
was that pretty
Minnesota.
welcoming? Not that you were coming back to University of Minnesota, but going there, but you're a Minnesota kid. Did you know a lot of the other kids on the team?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. A lot of guys that kind of played high school golf with. And the transition was pretty simple, which was nice. It's not always that way. My teammate at Texas, we came in as freshmen together. His grandfather was the athletic director at Texas.
Okay.
So we were spoiled with sitting in the AD suite for football games and stuff.
Yep.
But so when I wanted to transfer, I went and talked with him, and a lot of times you have to sit out. Certain sports you have to sit out a year when you transfer, and it's actually the athletic director that can release you. A lot of people think it's the coach, or at least in golf it was that way. I don't know if that's across the board, but
probably an NCAA.
and so if you can get released from the AD to not have to sit out, and I'd spent a lot of time with DeLoss. Dodds was his name, and had a bunch of dinners at his house with Stefan was my buddy, his grandson. And so I went and just talked with him and said, hey, look, here's what I want to do. And he knew obviously what was going on in my life. And he was super supportive of it and said, hey, you go have fun, go do your thing. You're fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
That was Christmas of 2010. Okay. 9 going into 10.
Yep.
7, 8, 8, 9, 9. Yeah. Yep. So.
And then how was the experience at University of Minnesota?
It was good. Yeah. Guys were super welcoming. Like I said, knew probably half of them. And then the freshmen and sophomores were kind of guys that I hadn't really met yet outside of anyone that was from Minnesota.
Yep.
but we came up when I was at Texas. The Gopher Invite used to be held at Spring Hill Golf Club.
Okay.
Out in Orono.
Yep.
And it's now at Winsong, but back when I was playing, it was at Spring Hill, and that's where I grew up playing.
Yep.
And so I told my coach, like, hey, we got to come play this Minnesota tournament. Like, it's gonna be one of the best golf courses that you guys play. And he's like, yeah, no, we're good. And we ended up coming up my sophomore year because I can't remember why he decided, but so we came up my sophomore year and I actually met a few of the guys at Minnesota that I didn't know when I transferred in. They were sophomores right under me.
Yep.
And so they were freshmen on the team. And actually my best friend, Timmy Peterson from the U, he came up to the putting green and introduced himself when I was at Texas, and I had no idea who he was. He says that he knew who I was and always kind of jokes about that. But I was like, yeah, sorry, I didn't know you. But yeah, so there was probably about 6 or 7 guys that I didn't know, but they were super welcoming. And obviously they, knew who I was from Minnesota golf. And because some of those guys would stay here in the summers and play like Minnesota AM stuff. So
yep.
if you play for a university in that state, you can usually play in their like state AM, state open, stuff like that. So some of like the foreigners and guys like that would stay here in the summers and just live at the U and play in the Minnesota stuff. So got to know a couple of those guys before I came over. But yeah, it was awesome. I really enjoyed the guys when I came over, and they welcomed me. And we had a pretty young team. So I came in as a junior. We had just 2 seniors, and then another junior who I grew up playing a ton of junior golf with. He was a kid from Wayzata. And then freshman and sophomore behind us. So my senior year was just us 2, and then I think it was just freshman and sophomore my senior year. So
and did you jump right into the top 5, or did you have to kind of work your way to get a spot?
No, I had to qualify. So when I transferred up here, Brad James was the head coach.
Okay.
He'd been a coach at the U for a long time. So he was the head coach when they won the national championship in 03. Okay. 03, 04. So they were actually going to cut the golf program that year.
Wow.
Like, it was decided they're going to cut the golf program, and then they win nationals. Like, all right, well, you can keep the golf program, right? And but so Brad, he's from Australia, and he was a really good coach, and that was kind of one of the big reasons I also thought about staying up at Minnesota, was to play for Brad. And so when I transferred, I was looking forward to playing with him. And actually, when I transferred up here, the 3rd day I was on campus, he calls me and he's like, hey, will you come to my office? And go in there, he goes, I got bad news for you. I was like, okay. He's like, I'm leaving.
Wow.
And I was like, what? I literally, 3rd day on campus. And so he ended up leaving, and he took the Australian national job.
Wow. To
coach that program, which is like a dream job, being from Australia. Yep. And so new coach came in. I actually knew him before, which was nice. But yeah, when I came in, I had to qualify. And so again, there were 2 seniors on the team at that time. I was a junior, but I came in on Christmas, right? So our qualifying was Braemar Dome. So
how does that even work?
Exactly. So on the back wall, right, of the dome, there's panels, right, like the lines, or whatever. And so they would select a certain amount of panels to be your fairway. Right. It wasn't the greatest.
Because they didn't really have, simulators weren't really a thing.
Not really. And, some teams had indoor facilities up in the North or Midwest, but not a ton. But, Minnesota just got their indoor facility probably 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're literally one of the last programs to get one up here. Like, Illinois had one early, and Iowa. Wild. And they're both, stud programs up here. And, but yeah, so we would literally practiced in the Braemar Dome. That's where we would hit golf balls, or we would hit balls in the football practice facility down at the U. Funny story about that. So I think they just put up the banners. I can't remember if that was a new facility, but basically right next to Bierman was the indoor football practice facility.
Yep.
And they put up these new banners, and I don't know what they were of, because we weren't really any good at football at that time, but
maybe those 3 national championships,
something like that, right? But
back.
So they're on the back wall, and so we'd hit wedges down the other end. But then we just started hitting irons, and so we're hitting them against the banners, and then whack, thud, and we didn't think anything of it. Well, if you were to walk to the other side and go on the back side of the banner and look back down the field, it was making holes through the banner. But when you looked at it face on, you couldn't see through it. But when you went behind it, you could see the light come through. And it was just like Swiss cheese, just everywhere. And so we got in a ton of trouble there. But, I mean, that's how we practiced. It was in there hitting wedges, and someone would go stand on the 65-yard line and tell you if it landed on the 63 or the 67, and or you'd hit balls into the panel at Braemar, right? But yeah, it was like you hit this fairway, point for a fairway or something like that, and it was like a score system.
Sounds
of
like
just
the big break or something.
Kind of, yeah. It was weird. So I remember I think I won qualifier, my first qualifier, and it was just like I was always a good driver of the golf ball, so I just like hit that panel with drivers over and over.
Yep.
And, but yeah, so I wasn't given a spot just because I came back up here or whatever, and had to earn my spot. But yeah, it was definitely interesting going from UT, this massive program that basically has everything for you and kind of treats you like professional athletes, to little smaller scale of that, qualifying in a dome and in panels, and
Kind of feels like Rocky going to Russia and training in the in the cabin.
But again, I mean, I grew up hitting balls inside.
Yeah.
When I grew up at Spring Hill as a kid there, the pro shop, how you get out of the pro shop kind of walk straight to the range. But so my coach would open his office window and sit inside, and we'd pull the mat outside and shovel off the front step, and I would literally have the mat here and he'd be sitting right there in the window, and I'd hit balls outside, and every 25 minutes I'd go warm up for 10 minutes and go back out, and we'd hit balls for 25, 30 minutes. And so it's just kind of how I grew up doing it. And so for qualifying, is it kind of weird how to pick a college team by what panel you hit on the dome? Yeah, but you can get better doing it. And so I knew that, no matter where I was, whether it was at Texas or Minnesota, I knew that I could still get better up here, and was comfortable doing it that way. And and also got that kind of break in the winter that I was kind of missing down there.
Yeah. Now, I know a lot of PGA players now have mental fitness coaches or just people to work on the mental side of the game. Was that a resource that you were given as a college athlete? Not
really. At least in golf, that was kind of when it was just kind of getting talked about. I'd say the first guy to really come out was Bob Rotella, right?
Oh, yeah.
The old Bob Rotella books that he wrote. But that wasn't really something you focused on or was really talked about much. And when I actually didn't start working with a sports psych until I was playing professionally. And after I worked with them for a while, looking back, I think it would have been way more beneficial to have a mental coach as a kid growing up than a coach.
Right.
So that's one part of the game that I developed a huge passion for, just the mental side of it and how you can get better in that area. But yeah, it was very, very new when I was kind of going through high school and college, and I mean we never talked about really the mental game outside of like your coach telling you to not get mad or whatever. Right. But there was no like structure around like mental performance and how to get better at handling emotions and the ups and downs of a round and a career, and so you just kind of figured it out, right? But after finally spending some time in that area and talking with professionals and working with professionals, it's something that's super undervalued and not a lot of focus on it at the youth stage.
Yep.
And I believe there's so much benefit in understanding that area of the game. It's just another arrow in your quiver that you can have. And I used it as a tool in my playing career to beat guys. I mean, there's a lot in there that we could go into this for hours.
Right.
I mean, we go down a rabbit hole if you want. I love this stuff. But yeah, so when I was like high school, college was not around, it wasn't really talked about. And now it's, everyone's got one now or just starting to work with one if they're not. And you see the benefits from it. And everything that you learn, or I learned in the golf space, right, you can literally just take it and just like apply all of it to life.
Right.
It's 100%. Not like specific to one sport, right? It's like, how your brain stores memories, and storing negative memories versus positive memories and the chemicals it releases, and then how you react to that and how your body language changes. And it's like, I can take all that, and when I'm hanging out with my kids and my son's not listening, right? And my cortisone is, going sky high. I can like fall back on that. And so when I started learning about it, I saw so much value and benefit of it. And really I just developed a huge passion for just that side of the game and just love talking about it with guys.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the biggest things that we do for the In Sports Foundation at the free camps that we run is,
Sure.
So my wife Bridget and a sports psychologist developed this program called Be the Best You.
Cool.
And so we're teaching elementary school kids about goal setting, self-confidence, and self-regulation. So we have a whole platform on how to set a goal, pretty simple stuff like SMART goals, and then we talk about self-confidence and have them do some different drills and things that just get them a little bit out of their comfort zone, but showing them like you can do anything if you set your mind to it.
Sure.
And then a lot of self-regulation breathing techniques that we use, like box breathing, and so they're just very simple entry-level things, but just to get kids starting to think about that, there's a lot that you can do to regulate yourself, and it is kind of a rabbit hole you can go down.
There's so much, yeah. And I remember, so the group I worked with, they're out of Scottsdale, called Vision 54.
Okay.
And it's run by 4 ladies. The 2 gals that started it were from Sweden, and they basically brought Annika Sorenstam up through the junior ranks all the way through her professional career. But the stories they had about working with juniors was pretty fascinating. And you get adults that, maybe you don't apply some of the things they use or don't want to use that technique or try that. And the kids are like sponges, right? They just take it all in.
Oh yeah.
And they had this one story about this kid. They were talking about a technique to use if you were nervous or you were thinking about hitting the water or whatever, that you could close your eyes and stand on one foot. And when you close your eyes, you lose your equilibrium, right? But that little self-talk voice shuts off, and all you focus on is not losing your balance.
Yep.
Right? And so they would have players that you could just raise your foot up like an inch off the ground, and no one would know you're doing it. And so I'd stand there on a green, and I'd be standing on one foot. No one would know I'm standing on one foot. But they were telling a story about this kid that was playing, and I can't remember how old he was, maybe 10 or whatever, but he had a putt to win like the one-day tournament they were playing, or club event, and it was like a 4-footer, and he was nervous, and he ended up walking up and he stood on one foot and putted it, and he knocked it in. And they're like, "Why'd you do that?" And he was like, "Well, I was nervous, and I just decided to stand on one foot, and then my brain shut off, and I just hit my putt." And
Wow.
It was like, whoa. But like, you would never do that. You're like, I don't want to do that. It look weird. But
Right.
he's like,
unless you're just tapping it in or something.
but it was like a 4-footer. He's like, I'll just do this. That works. Right. And so I think it's great that kids are, that you guys have that in the camps, that piece of it in the camps. Cause I think, kids just, they're sponges and they want to learn, and being able to, learn that stuff at a young age is super, super beneficial.
It's funny because when we do the self-confidence piece, we tell kids to like rub their belly and pat their head and then switch. And then we have them do it on one foot and then close their eyes. And so that's
Sure.
But I never knew that side of it, that like your brain actually just kind of shuts off, and that's all you
just worry about not falling over.
Yeah.
And if you're on one foot with your eyes open, it's a little easier. But when you close your eyes and you start kind of moving side, it's like all you focus on, and
Right.
that little self-talk voice is all of a sudden just kind of disappears on you.
Because like for you, I mean, I think there's a lot of people who are golfers that they get up to that golf ball and they've got a million thoughts running through their head. And you can only think about one thing at a time, but you just are constantly thinking about the next thing and the
Sure.
next thing and the next thing, and then you might not even be thinking about golf anymore. Do you have, like, what is that thing that you think about when you are standing over the ball getting ready to hit your shot?
Not much, really.
Yeah.
For me, it's just kind of target. But yeah, obviously in golf, everyone's, their mind's racing, and you got swing thoughts and feels. It's okay to have something over a shot, right? I think it needs to be more of a feel, right? So, if you're trying to work on taking the club more inside on the takeaway, instead of like telling yourself, okay, take it inside, right? I want to feel my left elbow closer to my body.
Yeah.
Or the rotation of my forearm and my elbow kind of tucked, right? So
Yeah.
it's more of a feeling of what I'm trying to do instead of a thought. You get thoughts going, right? That mind starts racing. That self-talk is just going a million miles an hour. That's never good.
Yeah.
So usually it was more of like a feel with kind of however the swing was going through that period of time, whatever it was. But at the same time, it's like, you have this kind of think box, right, where you do all your work ahead of time, and then you like cross this line of going from the think box to the play box, and like that's when you're over the ball, right? And the play box, like with Vision 54, their whole thing was like getting that self-talk voice to like shut down, right? And you kind of get into this flow state, right, where you're athletic and just your ability takes over, and you just hit it, right?
Yep.
And I believe that you don't have control of the outcome of a golf ball. And I've gotten arguments with buddies before about this, but I believe once you hit it, and just most sports in general, right? But golf, once you hit it, like you have no control over it, and you play it outside. So there's a lot of environments. And so I always looked at it as if I can do everything I can to the best of my ability in the think box.
Yep.
Before I go into my play box and try and shut all the thoughts off. And then also how I react to it, right? Because that's under my control too, right? So my focus was on doing everything under my control to the best of my ability. And I think that helped free me up when I was in my play box over the ball to not think about as much. Because I accepted that like I could do everything right and pick the right club, pick the right wind, make all the right decisions, do everything under my control the best I can, and I can just step up and shank it.
Yep.
Like that is a possibility. And if you can accept that ahead of time, then if it happens, it's not like, whoa,
Right.
So it kind of frees you up. It's just like, I've done everything I can. Now I'm just going to hit this as hard as I can and just see where it goes and go find it and do it again.
Yep.
So the process leading up to being over the ball, I think, is what helped get me in the right frame of mind to have a quiet mind. But at the same time, I've gone through periods where I get up there and it's like a choir, in my brain, just, I'm thinking about everything, and it's hard. It's a hard game, and it's a game of, it's a mental game. It's a game that you spend by yourself out there for a long time. And, but also, from the mental side, I looked at it as like, or let me ask you this, how long do you play golf a day when you play a round of golf?
Well, I think we have talked about this because you're out there for like 4 hours, but the time that you're actually swinging and hitting the ball is
playing golf 20, 25 minutes, maybe something like that, right?
Yeah.
And
so, a lot of in between.
A lot of in between, right? And so, we start working on what if we got better than everyone else? Let's say we play a round of golf 4.5 hours. We play golf for half hour. So we start focusing on like, what if we became better than everyone at the 4 hours that we're out there not hitting a golf ball?
Right.
Like when we're just walking around shot to shot, but that's when the brain starts going and you're walking up to 12th tee and you hit in the water there last week when you played out there, right? It's like, how can we get better there? And if we get better than everyone else in that 4 hour period, probably going to beat you. So it was, it's just something I've really enjoyed and become passionate about. And I think in sports or life, like you can get so much more out of it by focusing on that mental piece and understanding how it all works. It takes time, right? It's the hardest thing was practicing it.
Right.
Because you can learn it all, right? And then you can try and go apply. But like you just like anything, right? You got to spend time practicing it. So like, on the range, right? Or when I would go on the golf course to practice, like I would do a lot of the mental stuff and the mental drills while I was out there. One of the hardest things, like post-shot reaction. So after you hit it, right, it's gone out of your control. Well, I now have control over how I react to that.
Right.
How I think about the shot, what I tell myself. And so, going out and actually like practicing that was hard because you're so used to just hitting it, and then you lean, oh my gosh, it's not drawing or whatever it is, right? But it's like you'd have to be very aware of what you were focusing on and kind of come back and spend times putting in reps of post-shot reaction, right? As just one example.
And what is that? Like if you hit a bad shot, what have you like trained yourself to, how do you react to that shot?
Yeah, so I react to shots in two different ways, or I try to, I should say, the best of my ability. Sometimes you can't. There's 3 G's, great, good, or good enough.
Okay.
And so if it's great, good, or good enough, you start as a positive and you move on. And if it can't fit into that box of great, good, or good enough, you need to find something factual about it. How the brain stores memories, they store negative memories, but they won't store something that's factual as a negative.
Okay.
And And so there was always something I did back in the think box that was under my control that I probably did really well during that golf shot. And so if I were to pull one in the water, instead of being like, man, I always do that, or I knew I was going to hit it right, or, whatever, I would say something like, you know what, I picked a really good target there.
Yeah.
It's factual.
Yeah.
Or, I wasn't as committed to my target this time. Next time I'm going to take an extra second and really pick out a small target. Something factual about the shot. And that kind of helped me put that shot away just in a box and move on without putting a lot of emotion to it.
Yeah.
And, I think how we're all wired is there's more emphasis around negative things that we do because we put so much emotion to it. So much emotion tied to something that's negative. So like I always enjoy asking people, I'm like, tell me what's the best shot you've ever hit. Right. And most people are like, I gotta think, right? And I'm like, what's the worst shot you've hit? Like, I shanked one last week, man. It's like, boom.
Right.
It's like right away. Or when you get done with the round, hey, how'd you play? Shot 73, but I 3-putted twice and I made 2 pars on the right to the negative,
yep.
right? Even though you made 6 birdies and you hit it really good, it's like you jump right to the negative because you put so much emotion to that. And when you hit a good shot, right, you're like, I'm supposed to do that.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I'm supposed to do that. But it's never like, oh, yes. It's just like you expect to hit a good golf shot at the level I was playing at. You expect to hit it where you're looking. So when you do it, it's like, yep, okay, move on.
Yeah.
And so there's no like real like positive emotion that's tied to it. Or so when you think of memories, it's like those are harder to pull up, right? And so I would just with the post shot reaction stuff, I always just try to be very aware of if it wasn't one of those 3 G's, just to be factual about it, even though if it was negative, right? And there was a gal that the Vision 54 was working with who was on the LPGA, and I'm blanking on her name, but she was the number 1 player in the world probably like 6-7 years ago. And they had a story about her. She had I think a 1-shot lead on the 18th hole or 72nd hole. It was a par 5. She was going for it in 2, and she laid sod over it right in the water. Ends up making 6 and loses the tournament. And she walked off the green, and one of the drills we had was like a scale system, right? So you wrote down 1 to 5 on your level of commitment of what was under your control.
Yep.
So from start to finish, think box, post shot reaction, and so she lays sod in the water, makes 6, and she walks off, and she's going to sign her card. She looks over at the gals from Vision 54, and she goes, 5.
And that 5 is good.
5 meant she was fully committed to that golf shot.
Okay.
And just completely fats it and hits in the water and loses.
Yep.
And, she walked off saying like, that was 5. That was perfect. And that can happen.
Right.
You know, it's just the way it goes. And
it's centimeters of difference to make a shot from super good to horrible.
Yeah. And you can do everything under your control to the best of your ability and just hit a bad shot.
Yeah.
Or the outcome could hit a tree and spit dead right, hit the cart path, roll down the cart path hill and go in the water. It's like, you never know, right? Yeah. If that tree wasn't there, it's in the fairway. So the shot's the same, but something that you didn't have control over affected the outcome. And now you change how you react to it because of what affected the outcome and where the ball ended up.
Yeah.
And so if you can get good at just focusing on like what you have control over, whether it's golf or life or whatever, right? Yep. And then just letting go what you can't control. And my wife and I have different minds. Yeah. She's a little more of a worry bug and is anxious about things. And she's like, I don't know how you don't worry about this stuff. And I'm like, I have no control over it. Like, why would I give any thought? Like,
right.
I don't care. I cannot control whatever we're talking about. Like, there's no reason to worry about it. Like, and so, it's, it's, as you can tell, I enjoy talking about this stuff, but, it's just something I really try to focus on. And, once I turned professional and, started working with them, it's just something I've enjoyed and just felt like I would continue getting better swinging a golf club as I continue to work with my coach and my team. And that was an area I felt like wasn't getting a lot of attention from players. And I just felt like I could get better at that. And the way I looked at it is if we hit it to the same spot all day, I'll beat you like a drum because I'll think you better.
Right.
You'll hit it to 20 feet. I'll hit it to 20 feet. You'll be pissed. I'll be happy.
Yep.
I will beat you every day. hitting the same spot. I'll think you, and on the PGA Tour, I mean, those guys are just so good at that, right? Just controlling their emotions. And Tiger's really the only one that's really had the ability to like lose it. And then by the time he walks up to the next tee in 20 seconds, he's like all in.
Yeah.
Like he could flip it on and off. There's not a lot of guys that could do that. But those guys they're all good. Like if you play out there, you have a ton of talent, and it's just the small things that make a difference. And out there, the small things go so far, right? And so just the mental side of it, how you think and how you handle your emotions and how you react to shots and talk to people after the round. And, even in media, like they always ask, so what happened on 12, right? Everyone talks about all the negative stuff. It's just reinforced over and over in our brains. And so we talk about the 3-putt on 12, and we talk about the ball you hit on 16 in the water. And they don't say, tell me about that perfect 3-wood you hit on 14.
Yeah.
It's like, they don't want to hear about that. They talk about those guys are very good at staying focused in that area on the mental side of just paying attention and, what they can control. They do that to the best of their ability. And, but it goes a long ways out there. And I think if, kids can learn it at a young age, like in your camps, right? Like I think it holds so much weight and, can make the difference for a kid in a sport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, I want to take a quick moment to tell you about the In Sports Foundation. At In Sports, we're all about helping kids get more involved in sports. We do this through providing free camps, scholarships, and team sponsorships, all to help reduce the cost of sports and getting more kids into the game. Through sports, kids can learn valuable life lessons, stay active, and maintain their mental well-being. To support our mission and help us get more kids into the game, visit our website at insportsfoundation.org to make a donation. Together, we can make a difference. So we just had our In Sports Foundation golf tournament, and I was at the Wilds. If you've played out there, and hole 13 is an uphill par 3, and I was out there all day doing like beat the founders shot. So I hit the first ball, and then people tried to beat me, and they got a chance to win a prize. So I had 28 swings at this hole, and in the 23rd group, I put it in the hole.
No way.
And you can't see because it's like an uphill green,
kind of blind green.
And so I drive up there because I putted with the groups, and my ball's gone. And
no way.
Look in there, and it's in the hole. But all I was focused on is like I had 28 shots, so 27 of them didn't go in. But that was what my initial thought was on it. Like, oh, good job on the hole in one. I was like, well, yeah, but I had 28 tries
exactly, right?
Instead of really happy about just getting the hole in one.
That's actually funny you did that. I do help my buddy's company out at Minneapolis every year in their event. They do Beat the Pro on 4. Yep. The little bowl green right there. And I did that 2 months ago, and I hooped one out there. Yeah, I did too. So wild. But
yeah, I don't even know if you can count that because you had so many chances.
I know. It's like, oh, so you got your second hole? I'm like, not really. Yeah. I feel like you got to actually play around the golf, right? Like you got to finish. But yeah, that's funny.
You could have just started right there. Like, okay, hole in one. Now
exactly. Now we're moving on to 2. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about after graduating University of Minnesota, what made you decide to want to go the pro route? And did you have other thoughts of getting into the business world before? Were you set on playing pro golf?
I was set on playing pro golf. Yeah. I wanted to play in the PGA Tour, and ever since I kind of shifted my focus from baseball to golf. That's kind of when I shifted from the MLB to the PGA.
Right, that's your North Star.
And so it was always a goal and a dream, and that's what I had worked for years and years and years, and so it was something I was excited about. I because I didn't redshirt that freshman year, I played that second semester. I was done playing in after 4 years, so 2011, and I thought about turning pro. I wasn't ready at that time. Probably thought I was, right? But ended up staying for 5th year of school. My dad always, wanted me to get a degree, and so I stayed as a 5th year, and I actually stayed amateur my whole 5th year. And I wanted to go back and play the USAM again. I'd played in a couple, And so was fortunate enough to qualify for the Am again that year, and then turned pro that fall.
Okay. And that's just what they had at Hazeltine, like that.
Yep.
Yep.
So played 3 US Ams, and then my last one was in 2012, and then I golf is weird because like turning pro isn't like a big deal. Like
you're not signing a big contract.
No, you just like sign up for a tournament and you check pro instead of Am. And once you make a check, like you're declared. I'm a professional, right? So it's like it was just kind of weird. But so I turned pro in fall of 2012, and then played my first pro start was up in Fargo.
Okay.
It was a Dakotas Tour event, which is a mini tour. So it was the North Dakota Open at Fargo Country Club. That was my professional debut.
Great course.
Fun spot, actually. Yeah, it's really good. And then, then went to Q School that fall. But yeah, my dream was to play in the PGA Tour, and I didn't really have a plan B at all. It was just, this is what I'm going to do.
And was Q School just a grind? I've heard it's tough.
Yeah, it's a grind, and they've changed the format since I went through it. It used to be, so if it's your first time going through, you got to start at pre-stage.
Okay.
And so you got pre-stage, first stage, second stage, and finals. So basically starts in September, and there's one a month, right? And so again, if you're first time going through it, or if you didn't make it through pre-qualifier the previous year, you got to start at pre or whatever. So, but it's basically like 4 rounds. It's basically a tournament, and then X amount of those guys get to move on to first stage, and there's 12 first stage locations across the country, and X amount from each site moves to second and moves to third, or the finals. And then finals back then was 6 rounds.
Oh my gosh.
Now it's 4. So it used to be 4, 4, 4, 6. And so my first year I had to start at pre-stage, and there's probably, 12,000 people that try something like that each year. And ended up making it all the way to finals, and that's when I ended up actually qualifying, got my tour card through that first Q School. But I was one of 4 guys to start at pre-stage to get a card.
Wow.
But it's a grind. That final stage is it's more of a mental battle too.
Yeah.
The body will just keep going as long as you keep, putting water and food in it.
You probably can't have any bad rounds. Like you're probably
not really. Yeah. I mean, define bad, but if you shoot 80, like you're just toast. I mean, you got no shot. But you can shoot a couple over and get it back in another round or whatever. But yeah, if you have like a blow up day, you're kind of toast, right? And it's hard because like that's how you qualify to the tour. And so like now Q School goes to the Korn Ferry Tour, and then from there you move up to the PGA Tour. Before you went right to the PGA Tour.
Okay.
And then so top 25 at finals went to the PGA Tour. Everyone else got full status on the Korn Ferry or the Web, whatever it was called then.
Okay.
And so since they've changed it, you got to basically work your way up still. But yeah, so it was 6 rounds, and you get done. I remember I just fell to the ground, not fell, but I sat down and just laid down. I was like just beat, and not even physical. It was more just mental grind of just constant high pressure, and you know what you're kind of playing for and what's on the line, and but you have 1 week to perform, and if something happens or you just have a bad week at first stage and you miss, like you're out, and you got to wait a year. So I mean, you look at guys like Jordan Spieth. I don't think he made it out of first stage of Q School his first try.
Wow.
And then he was the number 1 name in the world, so he got 6 starts and made like $800,000 in those 6 starts and never looked back. But he went to Q School, and he didn't. I don't think he made it out of first. I don't think Brooks made it out of first or second, maybe. Then he went over to Europe and went over there and played, and that's how he got out there. But yeah, it's hard. You just got 1 week, and if it's a bad week, it's just like sorry.
Yeah.
And you might have had 51 other good weeks that year, right? And got some horror stories from Q School. I got food poisoning in one of them.
Oh gosh.
My last year going through it, I got food poisoning, and just like going back to the mental aspect of it though, right? It's like, what can you do? Like,
and you still played well with food poisoning?
Kind of, yeah. It was a bummer. I mean, no control over it, and that's I just went out and played as well as I could, but it was my last year, my last Q School I went through. So 2017 the second to last, 2017 for the 2018 season. In 2017, I probably played the best golf of my career at that point. And so I was playing really good. I just won a couple times in August. And so I get to finals playing like really, really good golf. And I was lucky. We got down there early. So we got down, starts on a Thursday. We got down there the Sunday prior. So I 2 courses. So I played practice on Sunday, Monday. Monday night, I get food poisoning, like vicious food poisoning. So I didn't get out of bed Tuesday. Wednesday, we went to the golf course. I hit balls for maybe 30 minutes and then went back to bed. And then Thursday, I play and still am sick. And I actually played pretty good. I made a quad on one hole, and it wasn't really that bad of a shot. Just kind of took a bad break and went in the water. And then anyway, so I shoot 4 over, I think, my first round. Friday, I'm finally feeling a little better. Not great. I shoot even, and then I blitzed the weekend and shot like 15 under on the weekend.
Oh my gosh.
And so I missed a full card by 3 shots, which is not a lot, right? And so you have conditional status, which means you'll get a start if all the guys ahead of you don't want to play that week and your number moves up high enough to play.
Kind of on the wait list.
Exactly. So if you're 10 on the wait list, you need 10 guys that week to not want to play this event for you to get in, kind of thing, right? And so missing a card by like 3 shots, I didn't get a start until like July.
Okay.
And so it's like, you have status, you're a member of the Corn Ferry Tour, but you literally don't play out there.
Yeah.
You know, and there were 80 guys that had a worse card than I did, or a worse number than me, right? And so it's like, it's just hard, and it's hard making it. It's hard staying out there. But Q school is tough. It's just, you just, like that. It's like, I can't control it, and it's just luck of the draw. But I got home Sunday night. Monday morning, I was still down 12 pounds. Wow. And I'd been eating food since Thursday. I mean, I was sick. And I've got food poisoning a couple of times, and it was, brutal. Yeah. But it's just like, you have no control. I mean, there was a buddy, he got his club stolen final round, final day, and he ended up playing with a rental set, and he made it through. I mean, there's just wild stories. Another guy, buddy of mine, he went through Q school 10 times before he made it. He won his 10th time. He won Q school his 10th time. And then he just won 3 times in the PGA Tour, but he literally took him 10 years to get there.
Oh my God. Do you have a favorite pro golf, whether it's PGA Tour, Corn Ferry, like a favorite memory that sticks out to you?
Ooh. Professional or just like in general?
I guess
back to
whatever.
kids?
Yeah, could be whatever.
Professionally, probably making it through that Q school.
Yeah.
At the time, I knew what I'd done, but at the same time, didn't really understand it.
Right. Like looking back, you might.
Yeah, it was just like, I'm gonna turn pro and see what happens, and I knew I was good and talented, and but not a lot of guys make it their first time, and whether it was a blessing or a curse or whatever, but it was just like, oh yeah, I'm here, kind of thing. Yep. And it's not supposed to be that easy, right? And there's a lot of benefit to struggling and going and playing mini tours, like you're playing single A ball, right, or something like that, and you rough it and you learn how to travel and live on your own and run your own schedule and run your basically own business, right? And I went from being told when to go to the golf course to standing on the range at the Sony, my first event, being like, I was literally watching them like a week ago on TV, so it was pretty cool. That first tee shot at Sony was pretty cool.
Nervous?
Oh my gosh. I remember, you have your routine that you do the same every time, right? Like you practice the same timing on it, and it's like a part of the process, right? And some of you like fall back on when you're stressed or nervous, like you fall back to your routine because it's the same thing every time. And dude, this ball was pegged so fast, and by the time he got my last name out of his mouth, I hit this thing. It was like, on the next tee, Donald, boom. And it was like, before he got it out, I hit it. I wanted to be done with that thing so fast. I was so nervous. And I was 23, and it was awesome. All those memories I have from being out there that week, it was all were all pretty cool times. But yeah, I remember that tee shot. It was like, I just want to hit this thing so badly right now. The guys, taking his time talking, making the announcements. I'm like, dude, just say my name and just finally just walked up and hit this big power cut into the left trees, punch it out, wedge it on, make par and move on. And that was the start of it. So
if you had any advice for parents who are maybe thinking about getting their kids into golf, like what advice would you give? Because there's so many life lessons you can learn from golf, but is there like something that you would highlight to say like, hey, if you're a parent thinking about this, like what would you say?
Yeah. I'd say two. One, just let them go play, right? Let them just go have fun and play. And, I feel like with golf compared to other sports, there's so much like technical aspects of it right away that you can work on, right? When most kids grab a hockey stick, they usually all grab it that's, the right way or the same way, right?
Yeah,
With like a grip, it's like you can hold it differently. And there's so much like, at a young age, I see these parents trying to like coach their kids on where the club should be. It's like, I'm like, my oldest is 4. And so, he's playing now, but when he gets a little bigger and he can actually hit it, like I tell him, hit as hard as you can. Go find it and just hit as hard as you can again.
Yeah.
Like we'll figure it out. Like we'll get there. You'll be fine. Just go hit it as hard as you can, as far as you can, and just go find it. Have fun doing it, right?
Yep.
And you can learn all that other stuff later. But then secondly, I would say this is more, I guess, from the parenting standpoint, I think how kids behave and react on a golf course or in sports is important. I'd say the best piece of advice I ever got was from my dad. When I was young, we were playing. So again, I 3 sisters, so he would pull me out of school some days and we'd go play golf, right? He pulled me out. I'm like, yes, I'm going to play golf. And so he'd come flying up in the school parking lot. I can still picture it clear as day. He comes flying up and grabs me. We go to play golf. And so we're out at Spring Hill playing, and I make like 6 on the first hole or something like that. And like I get mad and start kind of pouting. And I'm probably like, I don't know, 12 or something like that. And he just stops talking to me for like 2 or 3 holes. And I think we get to like 4, and I finally said something, and I was like, what, like, are you mad at me? Like, what's wrong? And he's like, no one's ever going to want to play with you if you act like that. I won't want to play with you. Your friends won't want to play with you. If you act like that, no one's going to want to play golf with you. And that's stuck with me ever since he said that to me. And so I think from a parenting aspect, you see kids these days, and I don't know if it's more so in golf, because in hockey, like you usually don't see a kid make a bad pass and then mid-game stop and start slamming his stick down until it breaks or something. Right?
It's like miss an easy goal or something.
Yeah, and golf is very much like you hit a shot, you wait, you walk, you think, right? You have all this time to like get mad at yourself and yell at yourself, right? Where other sports are so much more fluid and reactive. It's like you don't have time. No. So in golf, you see so many kids that are throwing clubs and hitting their bag, and there's one leg of the stands missing, and there's yelling and sweats, and it's not benefiting them at all in the game of golf or just developing as kids. And what we talked about earlier from just the mental aspect, like you want to be great at something and you're going to put in the time, and then you act like that, and you have that self-talk that's so negative, right? And I mean, I've seen kids just quit because it's just not fun anymore, right? And there's so much pressure on having to be great or hit it perfect, and it's like, dude, you're gonna miss a lot of golf shots, when you play. Like you don't hit that many perfect shots out there, and so most of them are pretty average. The guys out there that are really good, their average is better than your average. Right. Your good's as good as his good, but those guys out there, they play good like 4 or 5 weeks a year. Yeah. They make all their hay in 4 or 5 weeks, and then they're just kind of average all year. It's literally how most careers go. Just their average is better than your average, and that's how they beat you, right? But that's just something that will always stick with me, and I pride myself on how I handle myself on a golf course, and how I talk to people, and as a kid, how I talk to adults. Growing up at Spring Hill, it was it's a private club. It's kind of an old school, caddy club. And so like when it opened, like there were no kids. And my dad was like, well, I'm bringing my kid.
Yeah.
He loves the game. And like, I want to hang, I'm bringing him. And so I basically grew up at Spring Hill, like before juniors were even like allowed out there. And so my dad would bring me and he'd go play with his friends, and I'd sit in the pro shop with the head pro who ended up being my coach for 22 years. And I literally grew up in his office. And so I learned how to behave and act out there around adults, and there weren't any kids. And so when I was acting that way, the people I was playing with out there were men, adults. And so, he was saying like, I don't want to play with you if you act like that. And no one else out here is, or your buddies, and it was more of a life lesson than a golf lesson. I learned later that having that skill of controlling your emotions and how you act on a golf course is actually beneficial.
Right.
But at that time, it was more of just a life lesson of like, hey, like if you act like that, people just don't want to be around you as a person. Like they don't care if you're good or not. Like it's just not fun.
No.
Right.
Well, and that's like, we play a lot of business golf now, and sometimes you play with people and they're just getting so mad, and you're like, okay, maybe I don't want to do business with that person anymore.
You can learn a lot about someone on a golf course.
Yeah.
And it's very relatable to life, and you learn how to, handle the ups and downs and go through adversity. And most of the time things are not going how you planned them going. And that's kind of how life is. And you kind of you can learn a lot by just watching someone play golf for a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you for your help with the Broken Club this season, helping us host that Olympic. And there's a lot more to come with us partnering with the First Tee and helping grow the game of golf. So we'd love to have you join us with some of those things of impacting kids and
anything I can do to help.
That'd be great.
More than happy. Yeah.
Just want to thank you for all your time and coming on the Athletes in Sports podcast. And I know we got a round tomorrow, so I might be play a little golf. Standing on one foot if you see me doing that.
Well, I think we're partners tomorrow, we'll get some mental stuff going tomorrow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Don.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Athletes in Sports podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please take the time to follow, subscribe, like on all the channels. This is how we can continue to bring these inspiring stories to you and make a bigger impact to get more kids into the game.